If love feels like something you keep reaching for, but never quite get to hold, this is not because you are broken. If the people you desire most are the ones who pull away, go silent, stay distant, or offer crumbs instead of presents, this is not bad luck. And if deep down you keep asking yourself, why do I always choose the same kind of person in a different body? Then this conversation is not about dating advice. It is about memory. It is about the nervous system. It is about the first places where love was confusing, inconsistent, or unsafe, because most of us are not looking for love. We are looking for what feels familiar, and familiar is not always healthy. Emotionally unavailable people do not enter our lives by accident. They feel recognizable before they feel wrong. There is often a quiet sense of home in their distance, a strange comfort in their unpredictability, a pull toward the very absence that hurts us. And that can be deeply confusing. You may tell yourself you want closeness, honesty, consistency, but your body may be drawn to the opposite, not because you enjoy pain, but because your nervous system learned early that love comes with waiting, guessing, performing, shrinking, or enduring. When care was inconsistent, attention was conditional, or safety depended on being easy, strong, or low maintenance, your system adapted. It became brilliant at surviving. It learned to bond through longing, to interpret emotional distance as chemistry, to associate anxiety with connection, to mistake intensity for intimacy. So later in life, when someone is calm, emotionally present, and available, your body may not feel sparks. It may feel unfamiliar, even boring, even unsafe. But when someone is distant, unpredictable, or half present, your system recognizes the terrain, not because it is good, but because it is known. And this is where compassion matters. You are not weak for wanting people who cannot meet you. You are loyal to the emotional environment that shaped you. You learned love as something you earn, something you chase, something that arrives in pieces. So of course your heart keeps walking toward unfinished people, not because you don't value yourself, but because a younger part of you is still hoping, this time I will be enough to make them stay. This time I will finally be chosen. This time the story will end differently. But healing does not come from winning unavailable people. Healing comes from no longer needing to, from teaching your nervous system that love does not require self-abandonment, that closeness does not have to cost your dignity, that safety does not have to feel boring to be real. Rewriting your love story is not about becoming colder or more guarded. It is about becoming honest. Honest about what you learned, honest about what hurts, honest about what your body confuses with love, and slowly, gently choosing something new. As far rail can you are inside to alpha TOCACLU alpha AVL partners. One important thing is that learn to recognize familiar pain. Most of what we call attraction is not chemistry, it is recognition. It is the nervous system quietly saying, I know this terrain. When someone feels distant, inconsistent, hard to reach, emotionally blurred, and something in you leans forward instead of stepping back, that is not desire in the romantic sense. It is memory living in the body. There is a particular kind of pain that does not alarm us. It does not shout. It does not feel dramatic. It feels normal. It feels like waiting, like hoping, like reading between lines, like accepting less while telling yourself you are being understanding. This is what familiar pain feels like. Not sharp enough to reject, not loud enough to leave, quiet enough to call love. And the body is loyal to what it learned early. If care once came unpredictably, your system learned to stay alert. If affection was inconsistent, you learned to monitor moods. If closeness required silence or shrinking, you learned to disappear politely. So later, when you meet someone emotionally unavailable, something old awakens. Your chest tightens in a recognizable way. Your thoughts circle them. Your worth begins to negotiate. It feels meaningful because it is familiar, not because it is good. Real safety, on the other hand, can feel strangely empty at first. No rush, no guessing, no emotional weather to track. And for a nervous system shaped by uncertainty, that calm can register as boredom or lack of chemistry or something missing. But what is missing is the old struggle. The body does not immediately crave peace if it was trained in tension. So learning to recognize familiar pain means learning to pause when attraction feels urgent. To notice when your interest is fueled by anxiety rather than curiosity. To gently ask yourself not, do I like them? But do I feel calm inside myself around them? Do you become more yourself or smaller? Do you breathe more deeply or more carefully? The shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Because when you begin to see that the ache is old, not romantic, that the longing is learned, not destiny, that the pull is memory, not intuition, you stop romanticizing the wound. You stop calling survival love, and slowly you begin to choose something quieter, not dramatic, not intoxicating, but steady. And for the first time, unfamiliar, that is where the story starts to change. Notice how your body reacts to availability. When someone is emotionally available, your body may not celebrate, it may hesitate, it may grow quiet in a way that feels unsettling, not peaceful, just unfamiliar. You may notice your chest tighten slightly. Your mind starts scanning for reasons to pull back. Your interests soften without a clear explanation, and you may think something is wrong. But often, nothing is wrong. What is happening is that your nervous system is stepping into a climate it did not grow up in. If early closeness came with emotional unpredictability, your body learned to associate love with alertness, with reading small changes in tone, with waiting, with wondering, with bracing. So when someone is steady, your system does not light up. It does not recognize steadiness as intimacy. It recognizes it as unfamiliar territory, and unfamiliar to a survival-trained body feels risky. So instead of warmth, you feel doubt. Instead of curiosity, you feel numbness. Instead of desire, you feel the urge to escape. Not because the person is wrong, but because your body does not yet know how to rest inside connection. Emotionally available people do not require performance. They do not need you to calculate your words. They do not make you chase their attention. They do not reward self-erasure. And that can feel deeply uncomfortable, because without the struggle, you are left with yourself, with your real feelings, with your needs, with the quiet question, am I allowed to exist fully here? For someone who learned to earn closeness by shrinking, that question can feel terrifying. So the system looks for stimulation, for emotional friction, for the familiar ache of almost love, because pain that is known feels safer than peace that is new. You may even begin to criticize the available person. They're too calm, too open, too predictable. But often what you are reacting to is not them. It is the absence of emotional labor, the absence of anxiety, the absence of the role you once had to play to be kept. Healthy connection does not activate old survival skills, and when survival has been your primary language of love, safety can feel empty, flat, unimpressive. But emptiness is not always lack. Sometimes it is space. Space where your shoulders do not rise. Space where your stomach does not knot. Space where your thoughts do not rehearse abandonment. Space where your body is not preparing to lose. That space can feel strange, even wrong, until it doesn't. Healing does not happen when you suddenly feel fireworks with healthy people. It happens when you stay, when you breathe through the discomfort of calm, when you allow your body to learn that presence does not lead to punishment, that consistency is not a trap, that you do not have to be exceptional to be loved. Over time, your system begins to soften. What once felt dull begins to feel grounding. What once felt empty begins to feel steady. What once felt unsafe begins to feel like home. Not the old home built from tension and waiting, but a new one. Built from being met, from being seen, from not having to disappear to belong. And that kind of safety, when it finally settles in the body, does not shout. It does not intoxicate. It does not chase you. It stays. And for a heart that has always lived on the edge of leaving, being able to stay without fear is the deepest form of love there is. Had to stop auditioning for love at some point. Can many of us learn that love is not something you receive? It is something you perform for. You become more agreeable, more understanding, more patient than your body can afford. You edit your needs before they reach your mouth. You soften your boundaries so you won't seem difficult. You swallow disappointment and call it maturity, and slowly, without noticing, love becomes an audition. You monitor your tone, you rehearse your messages, you calculate how much of yourself is safe to reveal, not because you are dishonest, but because once being fully yourself cost you connection. So you adapted, you learned how to be impressive, how to be useful, how to be low maintenance, how to be whatever kept people from leaving. But real intimacy does not grow in performance, it grows in permission. The permission to be tired, to be unsure, to be inconvenient, to be honest when the truth might shake the room. When you audition for love, your nervous system is not bonding. It is working. It is managing, anticipating, preventing abandonment before it happens. You are not meeting someone. You are presenting a version of yourself designed to survive them. And the tragedy is subtle, because even if they stay, they are staying with the role, not with you. So part of you remains unseen, unchosen, still waiting. Stopping the audition is not dramatic. It does not look like confrontation or withdrawal. It looks like small refusals. Refusing to over-explain. Refusing to apologize for having needs. Refusing to trade dignity for closeness. It looks like letting silence exist without filling it with effort. It looks like saying what you feel without rehearsing 10 softer versions first. It looks like noticing when your body tightens before you send a message, and choosing honesty instead of strategy. This is not easy, because when you stop performing, something old may rise. Fear. If I don't try this hard, I will be left. If I am not exceptional, I will be replaceable. If I rest, I will be forgotten. These are not weaknesses. They are memories. They come from places where love had conditions, where attention had to be earned, where being real was too risky. So be gentle with the part of you that learned to audition. It kept you connected when connection was fragile, but it does not need to run your relationships anymore. You are allowed to be chosen without proving your worth. You are allowed to be loved without auditioning for the role. And the people who require your exhaustion to stay were never offering love, only familiarity. When you stop performing, two things happen. Some people fall away, and others finally meet you. Not the version that bends, not the version that manages, but the one who breathes, the one who takes up space, the one who does not disappear to belong. And that is not how you lose love. That is how you find out who was never really there for you to begin with. Now, UmbR4IS builds safety outside romantic relationships. When you have spent years chasing emotionally unavailable people, it can start to feel like love is the main source of safety. Like if you just find the right person, your anxiety will finally settle. Your heart will finally stop scanning. Your life will finally feel stable. But for many people, that belief is not romance. It is survival. Because if you grew up without steady emotional presence, your nervous system learned to look for regulation outside of itself. It learned to attach to whatever could soothe the ache, attention, approval, intensity, being chosen. And then, as an adult, you don't just want a relationship you want to rescue. You want someone to calm a storm they didn't create. So building safety outside romantic relationships is not a lifestyle tip. It is rewiring. It is teaching your body that you can be held by life, not just by a partner. Because if romance is the only place you feel okay, then you will tolerate anything to keep it. You will accept inconsistency. You will shrink your needs. You will stay in half love and call it patience. Not because you lack self-respect, but because your system is starving and it thinks the only food is another person. Real healing begins when you expand your sources of safety. When your body learns slowly that comfort can come from many places, not just from being desired. And this is important. Safety is not just an idea in your mind. It is a felt experience in the body. It is the difference between breathing deeply and breathing shallowly, between sleeping and scrolling, between clarity and obsession. So how do you build it? You start with what seems too simple, because trauma always makes simple things feel irrelevant. But simple is often where the nervous system changes. You build rhythms, a consistent morning, a consistent bedtime, eating at regular times, moving your body in a way that feels kind instead of punishing, sunlight, water, rest. These are not productivity habits. They are signals. They tell your body, we are not in danger right now. A regulated body makes different relationship choices than a dysregulated one. You build spaces where you don't have to perform. Friendships where you can be quiet. Where you can say, I'm not okay, without turning it into a joke. Where you can show up messy, tired, human, and still be welcome. If all your relationships require you to be impressive, then you never actually receive safety. You only receive approval. And approval does not calm the nervous system. It keeps it working. You build connection that does not threaten your dignity. Not every connection needs to be deep, but your life needs steady contact with people who treat you like you matter. A short call with someone who is emotionally present can be more healing than hours with someone who makes you feel uncertain. Sometimes safety is a simple interaction where you don't have to chase, where you don't have to wonder, where you don't have to interpret silence. And if you don't have those people right now, that's not shameful. It just means your nervous system has been living without enough support. In that case, the first step is not find a perfect relationship. The first step is to build a small network of steadiness. One person, one space, one routine, one community, one therapist, one group, one place where you are met. You also build safety through purpose, because when your life is empty outside romance, love becomes the whole stage. And then every text feels like oxygen, every delay feels like abandonment, every shift feels like the end of the world. But when you have purpose, work you care about, skills you're building, a creative practice, a goal you're committed to, romance becomes part of your life, not your lifeline. Purpose gives the nervous system a spine. It says, even if someone leaves, I still have me, I still have direction, I still have ground. And this is where it gets very practical. You build tiny promises to yourself and keep them, because the deepest safety is self-trust. If you say you will go for a walk, you go. If you say you will rest, you rest. If you say you will stop begging for consistency, you stop. Not perfectly, but repeatedly. Each time you keep a small promise, your body learns, I can rely on me. And when you can rely on you, you stop clinging to people who can't. You also build safety by learning to be with your feelings without outsourcing them. For many people, the anxiety in relationships is not only about the other person, it is about the terror of feeling what comes up when the other person is not there. Loneliness, grief, fear, emptiness, old shame, so fill the space with chasing, texting, scrolling, overthinking. But building safety means learning to sit with discomfort and not abandon yourself, not forcing yourself to be strong, just staying present. Even if your chest is heavy, even if your mind is loud, even if you feel that familiar urge to run back to someone who gives you crumbs, you breathe and you name it. This is longing, this is fear, this is the part of me that learned love equals uncertainty, and you don't obey it immediately. That pauses everything, because people who have internal safety can feel longing without turning it into self-erasure. They can miss someone without chasing someone. They can desire connection without negotiating their worth. And the more safety you create outside romance, the less seductive emotional unavailability becomes. Because you stop needing it to survive. You start to recognize it as what it is, a familiar atmosphere that once felt like home but was never actually nourishing. And then something beautiful happens. You don't become cold. You don't stop caring. You don't stop wanting love. You simply stop using love as anesthesia. You stop trying to turn a relationship into a nervous system medication. You begin to choose partners from fullness, not from hunger. From self-trust, not from panic. From steadiness, not from craving. And when you arrive in love that way, you don't need to audition. You don't need to chase. You don't need to prove, because you already have safety. You already have ground. And now love becomes what it was always meant to be. A place you share, not a place you beg to enter. Nambir 5is, grieve what you didn't receive. There is a kind of pain that does not come from what happened. It comes from what never did. From the tenderness that was missing. From the protection that did not arrive. From the questions that were never answered. From the comfort that was needed and not given. Many people carry this quietly. They say, wasn't that bad? Others had it worse. My parents did their best, and maybe all of that is true. But the nervous system does not heal through comparison. It heals through honesty. If something essential was absent, your body knows, even if your mind learned to minimize it. You do not chase emotionally unavailable people because you enjoy suffering. You chase them because a part of you is still standing in an old room, waiting for someone to finally show up differently, waiting for consistency, waiting for gentleness, waiting to be chosen without proving your worth. Every unavailable partner becomes a new stage for an old hope. This time the ending will change. This time I will be enough. This time the door will stay open. But the child inside you is not asking for a relationship. They are asking for repair, and repair cannot come from the people who resemble the original wound. It comes from grieving what you did not receive. This is not dramatic grief. It is quiet. It is heavy. It is the moment your chest tightens when you realize you never felt fully safe resting in someone else's care. It is the sadness that arrives when you admit you learned to self-soothe too early, that you learned not to ask, that you learned to be strong when what you needed was to be held. Grief begins when you stop pretending it was enough, not to blame anyone, not to build a story of villains, but to tell the truth. I needed more. I deserved more. I was shaped by less than. And when this truth is allowed, something shifts. You stop trying to collect it from people who cannot give it. You stop chasing warmth from cold hands. You stop bargaining with distance, because the longing changes shape. It becomes sorrow instead of strategy, tears instead of attachment, presence instead of pursuit. Many people avoid this grief because they fear it will drown them. But unfelt grief is heavier than felt grief. Unfelt grief becomes patterns, becomes addiction to longing, becomes attraction to absence, becomes settling for half love. Felt grief becomes boundaries. It becomes discernment. It becomes the quiet strength to say, this hurts in a familiar way, but I am not staying. You may cry for the childhood you did not have, for the softness you were never offered, for the safety that would have changed everything. And those tears are not weakness. They are the body finally exhaling, finally setting down the work of hoping, finally letting go of the fantasy that someone else will fix the original wound. And grieving does not make you bitter, it makes you free. Because when you no longer expect today's partners to heal yesterday's pain, you can finally see them clearly. You stop confusing distance with depth. You stop mistaking longing for love. You stop calling survival a connection, and something gentler takes its place. A love that does not need to redeem the past. A connection that does not carry the weight of childhood. A relationship that is allowed to be present day, human, imperfect, but safe, grief-clear space, not for loneliness, but for reality. And reality, when it includes choice, safety, and dignity, is more nourishing than the most intense fantasy of being finally chosen by someone who cannot stay. Writing your love story is not about becoming unfeeling. It is about becoming honest. Honest about what shaped you. Honest about what hurts. Honest about what your body learned to call love when it was only survival. You do not have to punish yourself for the chapters written in pain. You were protecting something fragile. You were trying to stay connected in the only ways you knew. But protection is not the same as love, and familiarity is not the same as safety. You are allowed to want more than intensity. You are allowed to choose calm without calling it boring. You are allowed to walk away from people who feel like home if that home was built on absence. This is not betrayal. This is growth, and growth is often quiet. It looks like pausing instead of chasing. It looks like staying present when your instincts say to disappear. It looks like choosing people who choose you back, and not dramatically, not perfectly, but consistently. So be gentle with the part of you that learned love through longing. Thank it, and then teach it something new. That connection can be steady. That care can be simple. That you do not have to earn the right to be held. You are not here to repeat the past. You are here to outgrow it. And every time you choose presence over chaos, honesty over performance, and safety over intensity, you are already rewriting your love story, quietly, bravely, for good.